So I mean, though you conceptualize CDN, just like, oh, outside problem, you're just talking about image. I mean, the same thing Zazzle's doing, right? That's what a CDN is.
I mean, that's one of the reasons I would think that people would think about doing responsive, right? If their website is fully image-based, then they have a problem right there in front of them that they are serving the wrong images to the wrong devices. So that
so you're seeing as a CDN solution even for their own image asset, for their own images assets as a service to re-render, basically, deliver what's needed. Yeah, okay. So you mentioned fonts entirely.
Yeah, has anybody actually tried using more like web fonts for your icons? And
yes, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. Because we're just starting to play with it.
Are you using your own font?
We do have our own font. If you look at the website, the logo and all of our iconography, it's kind of like the Uber Sprite. So we can just roll our own font, and everything's in vector, and everything scales, and everything looks great on Retina. We're big fans. IE8 and Chrome. Chrome is remarkably bad at web fonts.
Really?
It's
we're just
it's
starting.
the only thing I don't like about Chrome.
Hey, so you serve these out of your own servers and not the CDN, or where do you?
It's an asset in our system, so it gets.
And you don't see any kind of issues with like the Flash, after content loads, the Falcon stuff, where it's instantly there, no issues.
I'm looking at my team. It's pretty fast.
Yeah. Occasionally you might see something. I don't know. I'm asking.
I've never noticed it myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, if it's a very slow connection,
Yeah. So latency stuff. Yeah.
I mean, there are some interesting edge cases.
It's a real interesting way to solve the problem of all the image sizes, because fonts just naturally are so easy to do that. So to me, it seems really promising. Yeah.
So we are actually over time on today, on the speaking part. Is there any? Let me just ask each of you to make closing remarks, if that's cool. If there was something that you didn't touch base on, we can close, because I think we are.
I'm cool.
Yeah.
I'm cool.
You're cool?
Yeah. Know your customer base. Know the limits of the open source solutions that you try to use, and there's always going to be a little bit of engineering involved. And by all means, experiment in the UI layer. Ship something and then tweak it and make it good, make it good, make it good until it works.
Iterate. Those are the big threes. Never go with your first solution, because it usually is the worst one. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. Design is all about making mistakes, but it's all about iteration, and do a lot of user research. Take it in front of your users. Get to know, what are they feeling like? Do they like this? Do they not? So that's one of the things I would suggest to check out.
Oh yeah, that's Mike.
So my suggestion would be to remove the annoyance, because a lot of times what happens is you develop a great desktop website, but it is so annoying on the tablet. Reason being, you use hover states, you use a lot of other functionality that works only in desktop, and you have very tiny click areas. The finger is definitely thicker than the mouse pointer. So think in those aspects. The design should be more in terms of avoiding all these annoyances to the user. So at least if you do the minimalistic part of annoyances, then I think the future would be good.
Well, again, know your business. If you're going responsive, great. If you're going adaptive, be careful with SEO. I forgot to mention that, but be careful with SEO. You might need to follow some Google recommendations about how the bots will crawl your website, the same address. Make sure you do your lesson there. And I'd say, yeah, that's it.
We actually have a little more time than I thought, so we're going to open up for questions. Anybody from the audience here want to ask a question? Yeah. Let me come to you.
Hi. So I had a question based off your last point. If you could talk more about SEO. My general understanding is that adaptive pages are kind of more SEO friendly than mobile optimized ones.
Yeah, so I read some articles about some SEO experts about that, and it really is better because your content will be optimized for a mobile experience. You could have like meta tags for mobile, keywords for mobile and all stuff like that. But the only problem is that Google changed a little bit the algorithm to crawl the web. So if your website is not using an HTTP header called vary, and you specify user agent, then it will think that you're actually serving, it will not know if that your website was optimized for mobile. So you have to add this HTTP header or go responsive web design. So the crawler will actually know that you're doing responsive web design and the page is optimized for that.
Do you guys actually use HTTP very? Because I think it takes the user agent, right? And that causes a lot of problem on the CDN front.
It causes the problem on CDN because of caching, but as long as you're not using, if you're doing the request to an image and that image is not changing the file name, then you have this problem of caching. But if you actually use a different file, then you will not have this problem. So as long as you don't use the same path to two different assets, I think you're fine. But if you're using different files, then you won't have this problem.
Sure. So hi, I'm Ramesh. I work for the mobile web quality engineering team. So one of the pain points that we face on a day-to-day basis is the number of user agents that we are dealing with mobile web. So is there a best practice or something that you guys follow to kind of demarcate the different types of browsers, or while you're thinking about responsive design? So
I guess I'll just say, pick your top ones, start there. Especially when it comes to just pure revenue numbers. In the mobile space, most of our revenue comes from tablets. In the tablet space, far and away, most of our revenue comes from iPad. I don't even know where Android is on any of this. It's hopefully Android's going to grow, but I mean, we're just not seeing the revenue there. So I mean, if you have to choose one, choose an iPad, and choose iOS for the phone. But otherwise, testing is an issue. It is, we've invested in devices. We make sure that we run regressions across a number of devices. The Galaxy line is probably our best representative from Android.
Okay, other people raise your hands if you want to speak, and I'll get to you in just a minute. Okay, so you're next. Ben, stand up so you
Hey, my name is Arun. I work here at eBay. So I had a question about JavaScript web applications. So would any of you change your opinion if it is purely a JavaScript-driven web application? Like there is no server-side, like REST-based JavaScript application, especially about responsive. So I would actually think that that's about completely going around adaptive, because everything is off of JavaScript. Client decides what user needs or what the user agent needs. So would you think that responsive does not make sense for a JavaScript web application?
So if you're talking about JavaScript application, it's going to be like a single page application, right? Like more or less, like sparse. Okay. So I think if you're thinking about JavaScript purely, right, one problem goes away, SEO things, right, because it's a JavaScript application. It can, I would say an adapter would be a better solution there, because you are, again, designing it for a particular device or a particular range of users. But making it, I mean, like since a lot of mobile devices are also getting very powerful in terms of JavaScript and things like that, it again, like where you cut the mustard, right? So it's like you either choose your JavaScript as the templating and everything and you render on the mobile devices, or you basically choose a different format or a different view for a desktop and do that. So I think there is no clear answer to that one.
Well,
I mean, you got to know your app and you got to know what you're building. We run a lot of JavaScript on our site. I guess the main thing to be careful of is if you need SEO, then you need to be rendering content server side. So be careful with client side templating. But otherwise, JavaScript's great. We love it.
All right, we're going to do a question over here. Did you have a question? Yeah.
My name's Dan. I'm actually not an engineer or really a UI designer, but I'm in the technical realm. It's kind of more of a, I guess, conceptual or design curiosity. I know Bill touched on it briefly about jumping devices from, say, a mobile phone to your TV, or like the Wii U that has that gamepad. It goes from one to the other. How can you even really come up with a way to, would there be a way to switch your layout? Like, wouldn't technically be responsive because you're not resizing anything, but is there a way to detect when you're jumping from one device to another? Because say your aspect ratio on your mobile device is far different from the TV. And since I don't see that there being a callback to the server at any point during that because it's hosted on the device, how do you account for that, or if that's a problem that you've run into?
Well, you can use the aspect ratio with media queries. So you can actually change your CSS based on the aspect ratio of your screen. Yeah.
Well, at Netflix with our TV UIs, basically what would happen is we would, it's all JavaScript, and we'd just download a single, through a boot URL, a single little bit of JavaScript that then based on what we were doing, we decide, okay, this is Wii, this is a PS3, this is whatever, and you're in this test cell, and you got this treatment, and blah, blah, blah. You got your custom experience, right? And it's interesting, we didn't touch on it, but probably my closing thing should have been that A/B testing actually destroys the whole concept of responsive. In some ways, it doesn't really. I mean, but when you're trying to deliver an experience, if you're varying widely between your test cells, and across devices, all those tests, I mean, it's really hard to say I'm going to be responsive on all those because you're actually testing lots of big ideas. So I don't think I emphasize that enough. And
Yeah, to clarify what Bill's talking about, the big boys play with us as testers all the time. So
Yes,
Netflix delivers in units of like 10,000 people at a time different UI elements. Facebook does the same things. So if you've ever had an experience when you're in Facebook and something's different, you're like, oh, they changed something. It doesn't mean that everybody's seen that. It means that you're seeing that. And then they look at the metrics based off of your use patterns, our use patterns, and they hone the application. So it's based off actual test cases. Netflix is doing it, Facebook's using it. I'm assuming other
eBay, all of it, yeah, all of us, yeah, of course. And I should
so
say
when you do that, what you're saying is if you
I
have
should
responsive design, you have another metric in there you can't test for.
I should say I was in media training last week for 4 hours, and they told me I was not supposed to say that we experiment.
I know, that's why I said it.
With our users.
Yeah, they experiment with their users.
But I gotta prove to say we learn from our customers.
You
okay.
hone your
So
your
cut
app
that
to
part
fit.
out because Leanie's going to check it, did the media training.
Well, it's actually funny.
And
This came
I'm
up
going to be screwed again, going to have to go through another 4 hours of training.
This came up a lot in the last web debate, and I did take offense to it. I'm like, don't use us like that. It felt weird. And over the time, we're like, oh, that's kind of cool.
We'll actually
cool with it.
experiment directly on you. I'm
Yeah.
going to call my buddies up at Netflix. What's your Netflix login? I'll get them to fix you up. Yeah.
It's probably Lyle, actually. Another question?
Yeah, Lyle.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Alex. So one of the big battles that we've been talking about is adaptive versus responsive. I want to flip it onto the responsive side and get everyone's opinion on kind of the static responsive versus fluid responsive. And if anybody doesn't know what that means, try to explain.
You mean when the page is not flexible, it's just static, otherwise?
Like having static breakpoints where, say, at 320 you're locked in, and at 400 it's still at 320, right? Snap to that pixel size rather than extending out.
So I don't know if everybody's seen it, but Luke Grabluski has a really great article. If you just search Google for Luke W. and look for responsive design patterns.
Right.
He's got about 6 or 8 that he's identified, and the mostly fluid is one of them. And it's kind of good because it shows different sites. It actually goes to what media queries.ie, .es, media queries. It's a great place to look at all those. It's a fascinating thing because, some media publishing sites are, really good at, it'd be really good to maybe just adapt the readability with columns and stuff like that. And others, it's more stacking. And I think it depends on the particular site.
I'll also say we've experimented a little bit with fonts changing based on the width. You can define your fonts in units of the dimensions of the page. It's hard to design for that. It's a whole lot easier to throw a breakpoint up there and just adjust your fonts. So when done well, it can be done really well. But if you don't do it right, it could actually get you into a lot of trouble.
I think we're actually going to wrap up. We'll have one more question.
That's a good question.
Yeah?
So this is Maddie from eBay Wire Experience. So just to continue our friend's question, so when you resize the page size, how would the resources get loaded? Are we loading all the resources from the beginning? This is considering for a fluid design. So are we loading all the resources from the beginning, or we do calls to load all the resources? And also, how important it is. Should we design pages to be fluid responsive, or static responsive is enough? So that's all about it.
I'll jump in and say you have to optimize your page based on the page itself. It's another thing that we experiment with all the time, and we have built into our framework the ability to say, okay, we're going to render this widget server side, or we're going to defer load this at load time. And it's that spectrum of how quickly does the page load versus what's needed for SEO versus, and every element's a little bit different. But there's no reason why you can't load everything for fully responsive. It just may be a larger download over a carrier network.
Yeah, especially mobile. Yeah.
Do you prefer lazily loading it or right at once?
Well, again, it depends. And we flip switches all the time based on what's helping us with SEO, what may be hurting us with SEO, what we tune it. We experiment a lot too. We experiment on our users.
Yeah.
I didn't take a
lab
course.
I also think it's a little bit tricky to lazy load that, because you don't know on page load the viewport size. So it could be actually already small when you load the page, and if you lazy load, you could get some flash of unstyled content. So it's a little bit tricky to lazy load for responsive, I would say.
Yeah, I got to say that's why I like the idea of having an asset detection at the server side, because that does resolve that problem, right? It doesn't for being like the pretty thing we just saw of getting smaller and smaller on the site. But who cares at that point, right? If they got a desktop machine, give them all the assets, and then detect on the client side. Anyway, I like that approach of detecting when the device is a handheld, for example.
Yeah, we actually are using Warful, which is one of the device detection libraries. But I think eBay, you have your own? Is that what you have? Device detection library on the server side?
Oh, yeah, the mobile team has one. I'm not sure. We just call an API, and they give us everything.
By the way, with Platform One, our new initiative, we should just use
This
yours.
is the same company, you guys.
Well, yeah, we actually have an initiative to start using each other's stuff.
Yeah, you should probably
It's
swap
amazing.
places once a week or something.
Yes. No, we.
It
So,
sounds
yeah, we
like
should
they have
talk
a
to you.
solution you might be able to use.
Yeah, I could quit paying my $50,000 a year license.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. And
All
pay,
right.
And pay you instead.
Are you at eBay? Yeah. Okay.
So
That's
so,
the guy who
well, see, here's the deal. I have to come to the panel
Yeah.
at eBay with another eBay guy to find out that they're that.
That's great.
That's sweet.
You guys need like internal developer
Yeah,
advocates
yeah.
that can
You
share.
know how many
knowledge.
people are at eBay Inc? 30,000 people. Yes,
So we still have the space for quite a while. We're actually here until, we can be here till 9, so another hour of hanging out. So now's the time to really dig in a little bit more and ask people questions. And thank you all for being here. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you. If I could just say something.
Oh, yeah,
I
sorry.
just want to say thanks for inviting us. This is a great
Yes,
talk.
it was great.
Can I just say something else? Yeah, so thanks as well. And by the way, Yahoo is hiring.
Ah.
And all of our new stuff's all on Node.
I'm also at UC Santa Cruz
Not
Extension.
C#.
In UC Santa Cruz Extension,
Hey.
this February for next quarter, I'll be teaching a 6-week mobile UX UI course on how to create a mobile application from start to finish. And you guys will actually have an app at the end of the 6 weeks for Windows 8, Android, and iOS 7. So if you guys are interested, I'll be over there hanging out. Yeah.
So the Great Web Debate, we do these every once in a while. We are looking for suggestions on a debate format that makes sense. Feels like hiring seems to be this topic point over and over again. Maybe we should have an argument about headhunters and what's appropriate for companies to do, because I got some opinions on that. Anyway, thank you all for being. Stay around, have some more food, and chat with
Thanks.
everybody.